Colman Domingo might just win Best Actor at the Academy Awards for this performance, and quite frankly, he'd deserve it.
Do this, Dr. King. Own your power.
Rustin is the latest film from director George C. Wolfe, who is probably most well known for his film Ma Rainey's Black Bottom that came out a couple years ago. It seems like most critics tend to favor that previous film over Rustin, but I'm actually in the opposite camp. I really enjoyed Rustin, and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom was just okay for me. This film follows the story of Bayard Rustin, played by Colman Domingo. Rustin was a civil rights activist. He was a key advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he was the main mind behind the march to Washington in 1963. I found myself pretty drawn in right from the opening sequence, where essentially we're presented a pretty clear juxtaposition of the youthful ignorance and joy and the harsh reality of the Black experience in the 1960s. In these opening shots, we have no dialogue. We just have some simple piano playing in the background. And this is just one example of how music is really centered in this story. In Rustin, music is used as a tool to show hope within the Black community. It's also an acknowledgement of the impact and significance of Black culture in America. We have throughout the film amazing music playing either for us as the audience in the background or often for characters in the film. There's plenty of swing music, cool jazz, everything that these characters need to escape the harsh reality. On the surface, this might seem like a pretty straightforward biopic. I mean, the name of the film is literally the surname of our central character, and we do follow his journey. But it's not just a checklist of Rustin's main achievements or even the primary bullet points on his path to successfully create this march on Washington. What it really is an exploration of intersections of oppression. Rustin was a Black man. Rustin was also a gay man. And so this film adeptly explores how he's simultaneously facing multiple challenges, both through the color of his skin and also his sexuality. Beyond that, the film also explores the tensions between different civil rights groups at that time. Tensions between the NAACP, between various student nonviolent organizations, Christian civil rights activist groups, and acknowledges the role of the Black Panthers as well. All of these groups had the same or a similar objective, but what Rustin does well is highlight the reality that this was not always clean, this was not always neat, this was not always easy, and everyone wasn't always on the same page. Wolfe took a screenplay from Julius Breese and Dustin Lance Black, and it fit perfectly within his style. Wolfe comes from a very renowned theater background as a director, and this film utilizes a lot of pretty amazing dialogue, in my opinion. We'll dive into the specifics in a second here, but it makes use of these conversations, these disagreements, arguments, and compromises. Some critics have found this style to be lackluster or a little bland at times, but I found myself completely engaged in the conversations between characters, and the dialogue, in my opinion, was extremely effective in conveying what it wanted to convey. It was quick, it was witty, it was punchy, and it was memorable. Some critics have said similar things about the cinematography being a bit on the bland side, but again, I don't really see that. The cinematography here incorporates a little bit of a film noir feel, which actually kind of makes sense in this situation. Rustin is essentially trying to crack a case. He's trying to figure out against all odds how he will be able to orchestrate this march. And the cinematography kind of mirrors that. It's very dark, very low-key lighting. At times there are interesting choices in camera movement, but a lot of the time it's just a locked-off tripod. Really, though, what everyone can agree on when it comes to this film is that Colman Domingo's performance was extraordinary. One of the first lines that he says to another character is, "You are a star." And the audience immediately feels that way about Domingo and his portrayal of Rustin. I found myself on the edge of my seat whenever Domingo was delivering his lines, and that's in part due to the writing of his character in this film, but it's primarily due to his commitment to this performance. Some folks might find certain lines or certain delivery to be a little bit over the top, but it worked for me. Domingo was hilarious. Domingo was complicated. Domingo was emotionally distraught at times, and as an audience member, I felt all of those with him. Rustin may very well have been this bold personality that we see on screen through Domingo's performance, but really what his personality shows to me is a man who uses this brash and bold exterior to mask the pain that he's feeling inside. And as this is the case, Domingo's performance is perfect. He shows so truly and so deeply a man who is willing to risk it all. Because if he doesn't, what will he have? Essentially, Rustin is forced to be larger than life or fade away forever into the background. There are some other strong performances here, notably Glynn Turman as A. Philip Randolph and Johnny Ramey as Elias Taylor, who is a fictionalized character but is used to perfectly explore Rustin's complex sexuality and how that ultimately affected his political career. Outside of that, the most notable name would probably be Chris Rock. He played the head of the NAACP, and I never really got behind his performance. Maybe that's on me for being unable to differentiate Chris Rock, the comedian and the performer, from the role that he was playing here. But I think in the greatest performances, we have no choice but to accept the actor as the character that they're portraying, and I didn't quite get that here. Ultimately, Rustin is an effective film in highlighting a civil rights activist that not everyone may be aware of. It builds to this very emotional peak as we finally make it to the March on Washington, where Dr. King delivers his most famous speech, "I Have a Dream." The film ultimately does wrap up a little too neatly. Yes, it acknowledges that Rustin will be forced to spend the majority of his political life in the background due to his sexuality, but it also leaves the audience with a suggestion that this march on Washington solved all problems. I would have liked a deeper acknowledgement of the pain, the struggle that continued on after this. By omitting those facts, it feels like a little bit of a cop-out. All of that being said, I did really enjoy this film, and I would give it, I've been struggling here, I'd probably give it a 3.5 out of 5. Reason to watch this film, obviously, Colman Domingo's performance. He has a very good shot at bringing home an Academy Award. A reason maybe not to watch this film, at times the dialogue, the performances can be seen as a little bit over the top, and it also wraps up a little bit too neatly, in my opinion. Regardless, this film's available on Netflix. They've actually been putting out some pretty good films and some even more to come in December. So check it out. I would recommend it. And if you made it this far, don't be afraid to do the subscribe thing, the like thing, the comment thing, you know, all those things. And hopefully you watch the next one. Cheers.